Hello everyone, AmyR here from Prairie Paper and Ink with another video for the Picket Fence Studios YouTube channel. I used a few oldie but goodie favorites of mine from Picket Fence along with the new A2 stamp cover plate with Postmark wafer dies. And I did some mixed media with inks and pastes. I even stamped with a coffee mug, which I have shown in previous videos on my channel. It's a really easy way to make little coffee rings because this is a coffee themed card, one of my favorites to make. So as always, I will have links to all of the things in the description box below the video for you to check out if you are interested. And let's get right into making the cards. So the first thing I did was stamp out the main image from the Coffee Understands Again stamp set. And I'm going to stamp that onto some smooth white cardstock. This is Simon Says Stamp 120 pound smooth white cardstock. This is my just preferred cardstock for alcohol marker coloring. And I'm going to stamp the image with an alcohol marker friendly ink. And as I like to do, I'm going to do everything twice. Because when I've got all the supplies out, why not make more than one? And I also do that because when I'm filming, usually I kind of have one as a template that I can fiddle with and, figure things out before like officially turning the camera on, which at times I forget to turn the camera on, which comes into play later. So, I'm a professional. Hooray. Anyway, stamp that image, set that aside. I'll come back to that later. But while I had the stamp wheel out, because it's a good size stamping platform here, and it takes up a big chunk of my very enormous desk that has very small workspace. Go figure. Anyway, I'm going to stamp one of the sentiments from the set, and I want to heat emboss it. So I use my anti-static powder tool on the cardstock. That just helps keep the embossing powder from clinging to anything other than the stamped image. And I'm stamping the sentiment with Seedless Preserves Distress Oxide ink. Oxide inks, because they have pigments in them, they take a little longer to dry and makes it easier to emboss with them. Now, you don't need this emboss powder. You could just use clear. That would work too. But I have a ton of embossing glazes, which are also made by Ranger, and they go with the distress colors. So this is Seedless Preserves embossing glaze. So after I stamped the sentiment, I poured over the same color of embossing glaze, which it is slightly different than using clear embossing powder because, as you can see, it's tinted. It's, it's the pretty purple Seedless Preserves color. But again, you could use clear. The only reason I wanted the sentiment heat embossed was so that it resists, the ink and whatnot that I'm going to be applying over it. So after I had poured over the embossing powder, tapped off the excess, melted this with my heat tool till everything is smooth and shiny and melted, then I can start doing some mixed media. So I stuck my little background to one of the Picket Fence paper inking palettes just to hold the cardstock and the stencil in place. And these first stencils I'm using are from the Best Bean in Town layering stencil set. And I'm using Vintage Photo Distress ink and a Picket Fence blending brush. And I'm purposely not applying the ink evenly. You can see it was like darker in some areas, lighter in others. This is just part of the background. So I'm also using a light hand with this ink because Vintage Photo can be quite dark if you apply it, heavily. But I don't want it to be super heavy, intense, because I'm going to add other things. So that was the first layer of the stencil. And then the second layer adds that, the little slit in the coffee bean, So this one, I went over a little heavier handed just to, differentiate between the two, layers of the stencil. Still using that same Vintage Photo Distress ink. Once I've got that, I'm going to take my background off my paper inking palette and I'm going to use the same ink and the blending brush to just to blend ink around. Out of habit, I prefer doing stuff like this just on my glass work surface. I know a lot of people still use their grip mats and blend that way. I find that I just get annoyed. I find that the bristles of my brushes kind of stick to the mat and I don't like it. I see so many other makers do it and it works so well for them. And I'm like, why? It drives me nuts. So anyway, personal preference. So after I did the blending, I then smushed ground espresso Distress Oxide ink onto my work surface, sprayed with a bit of water, and then a coffee mug just like I'm showing on screen. Press it into the pool of color, press it to your cardstock. You got a coffee ring stamp, and it'll just depend on the size of mug. You could use any sort of cup, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be a coffee mug. These coffee mugs just happen to be a good size for A2 size cards, so that's why I keep using it. So I did that with the rings, and since I had this like pool of ink still on my work surface, I used it to splatter. So I splatter those backgrounds, and I'm also splattering these panels that I die cut with one of the dies from that stamp cover plate with Postmark die set. And I'll come back to that and the coordinating dies in a bit as well. So I did all my splattering. And then to add even more mixed media goodness, I'm using the Whole Lot of Polka Dots stencil. So I've stuck my background back to the paper inking palette to hold it in place. Got my stencil. And over that, I'm using the Picket Fence chocolate frosting paper glaze Luxe. I've used this in other videos. You can't really see it very well on camera, but in real life, it's got sparkle in it. Like it's a glittery paste. It's really pretty. Like super, super dark brown, but with glitter. So it's definitely got more cowbell. I love it. So anyway, I applied it just a little bit. I didn't cover the whole stencil. I just did a couple areas. As soon as I was done, sealed everything up, immediately cleaned off my stencil, my palette, etc. Okay. Now back to the main image I stamped at the beginning. I super zoomed in. I don't know if this is helpful or not. I don't usually zoom in this much, but this image was a little harder to show on camera because she's very tall and skinny, So I thought, well, maybe I'll just zoom in because there's not a whole lot of coloring involved. I did speed this up in editing. I don't color this quickly. So yeah, all the marker colors are on screen. And I discovered a nice big old oopsie partway through this while editing. I didn't realize that till I started editing. Anyway, I'm using OLO Markers to do my coloring. I do not have them connected. That's why they look so funny. These are half markers. They come with little connectors. You connect, either two different colors or the same color together for a full marker. I am still holding out because I am stubborn, waiting for the magical day they announce that they're going to release like fine tips, like little bullet nibs, because that's what I want. I love these brush nibs, but I want a fine nib. That would be my perfect marker for these. So I use them as what I call them stublets. This works for me. It just looks weird to people and they're like, what is wrong with you? Are your hands not cramping? And no, shockingly. But yeah, that's just how I'm doing the things. So I colored in her skin tone, both their skin tones first. That's generally habit with me when I'm doing people images. I generally do skin, hair, and then clothing, accessories, etc., etc. That's also just a habit thing over the years. And again, the coloring, very simple. I'm not doing anything special, groundbreaking, nothing. I was just adding some color. So added in some of my darkest brown here into her hair. Just scribbled it on. No blend needed with this. And then during editing, this is where I discovered my oopsie. Didn't think while I was coloring this. So I'm coloring in her shirt. This was fine, the R 5.7. So added my darkest shade. And then it's when I go to the next shade and it completely threw me off. And I thought, I was like, Olo, why did you do this? This color does not match the cap. Yeah. I had the caps mixed up. The 5.5, that's 5.3. That's it. That's all I did. And I was like so lost. And I was like, see, this is the shade I want. 5.3 is like darker. What's wrong with you, Olo? Yeah, no, I had the wrong caps. So yeah, that was my little oopsie. And I didn't discover it till I started editing. And then I was like, wait a minute. This was probably a me problem. Like I probably caused this. Yeah, I put the wrong caps back on the markers. So anyway, just 5.7 to 5.5 to 5.3. They were in technically the right order. It was just me messing them up. So colored in her shirt with those. And in the book she's holding, I just used the 5.5, 5.3, and then I pull in 5.1 just to keep it a little lighter, just for a little differentiation between the book and her shirt. And then a little bit of a warm gray for the the pages and for the top of the little to-go cup. And then I decided to color the to-go cup itself just a really bright green. Just this is the only green on these cards. That's it. Just this tiny little pop of green, because why not? So I colored all that in, and I do have the coordinating wafer dies for this set. So that's what I used to cut her out. But honestly, if I didn't have them, I would have quickly just fussy cut it. Other than the little area in between her like arm and the coffee cup there, I wouldn't have fussy cut that. But everything else would have been super simple. So I'd fussy cut that, and then I'd cut up just various bits of cardstocks with some of the individual dies from that stamp cover plate with Postmark die set. And on the rectangle one, I stamped another sentiment from the Coffee Understands Again set. And then on the circle one, I also stamped another sentiment, because that's my only issue with this set. I like all the sentiments, and I want to, trust me, I tried to pack all of them onto these cards. I should have just made bigger cards, but yeah, because they just make me laugh. But I used a couple of them anyway. And then after I'd stamped those, and I'd stamped those with just black ink onto the white cardstock die cuts. And then I took the ground espresso distress oxide ink and just took it direct to paper, just along the edges of these background panels, just to, one, cover up that exposed little bit of the white cardstock edge, and also just gives it that little extra something. And it just depends on how, what angle you hold the ink pad at, and how far in you want to, if you want to drag the ink pad across, like however you want to create texture. And then, yeah, I thought I was filming and I wasn't, because I adhered the little like postmark. I die cut one from black cardstock and then the outline from this like plum cardstock and adhered them together. It was actually really easy. I just held it with my reverse tweezers, added glue, stuck them together, and then looked at my camera and realized I never filmed it. So anyway, after I adhered those together, I added some baker's twine to my backgrounds. Just, just because I had some brown and white baker's twine in my stash, and that just went with everything. And then I just had to start assembling. So I die cut more, just bits, just scraps of cardstock with some of those little postage wafer dies, just to build up some of the texture and everything. So those I adhered with just craft tacky glue. And then my little main image, I trimmed down little bits of some foam tape just to be able to pop her up, give it a little bit of dimension. And yeah, really simple. Not a whole lot of fiddliness for this. I talk about this a lot. I don't really like to, if I have to trim down foam tape and get really fiddly, but this was simple because it was, straight lines basically. So pop that up with a little bit of the foam tape, and then adhered this to that background that I die cut with the large die from the A2 stamp cover plate. And then the sentiment, on the little postage die cut, I popped up with some thicker foam squares, so it goes over the all the different layers I've got, assembled there. And then for the insides of my cards, that's where I'm going to use this like circle postage piece. I decided to zhuzh that up with the Vintage Photo Distress ink as well. So just blended around the edges with my blending brush, and then went like over the entire thing with just a lighter hand, just to add that bit of a coffee color, to the inside as well. And then while I was doing this, I was like, do the inside of the cards need coffee rings? Of course they do. So my card bases are just top folding A2 white note cards, so 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. I smushed the Distress Oxide, the ground espresso Distress Oxide ink onto the work surface, sprayed with water, pressed the coffee cup into it, pressed it onto the inside of the card, and just keeping everything kind of spaced out enough that there's still plenty of space to write something to the recipient. And then I had another piece that I had die cut with another one of the wafer dies, because there's a bunch in that die set, the stamp cover plate with postmark dies. And I trimmed down, just trimmed a piece off the end, adhered that to the inside, adhered the sentiment, and then took that other little piece and then just adhered it to the other side. So waste not, want not. Got that adhered, and then adhered the card front. And then as my final little bit of embellishment, I just had some espresso colored confetti in my stash. So I just adhered a few of those using my little craft tacky glue. And then once these are adhered into place, these cards are complete. So these were fun. And I was just, yeah, normally I do, for whatever reason, when I do like coffee theme, I like to do like brown and aqua together. But this time it was like brown and like plummy purple, with like seedless preserves. It's fun. And then that little tiny pop of green, just there. So, like I mentioned in the intro, I'll have links to all of the things in the description box below the video, so you can check that out below if you're interested. As always, thank you all so very much for hanging out with me, for thumbs upping and commenting. It helps a ton. It is very much appreciated. Subscribe if you haven't. We'd love to have you, and I'll see you all very soon in another video. Bye.